in the Cosmetic Podcast.
Cosmetic means being a person or thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that is dynamic or energizing.
Exactly topics and telling the truth.
I'm Rodrigo Ross.
I'm Keith Benson.
So today we are talking about excellence, right? Which is becoming so increasingly important. Like, how do you increase or maintain your executive presence, your gravitas, right? Virtually.
Right.
Because, man, let me tell you, I've seen some things in some of these virtual meetings.
Well, you know what I'm getting tired of seeing?
Oh,
If I look up another nostril.
I've seen up a couple of nostrils myself.
Hey, people. Focus in on your camera, right?
Yeah.
And make sure you at eye level
With the camera.
Right.
So that may mean sometimes that you have to lift up if you're using a laptop, you gotta lift the laptop up, like you gotta prop it on something. Like you should be eye level wherever the little camera circle is on your laptop. That's what should be eye level.
Right. Sign on a few minutes early to whatever call that you have.
Yeah.
And look at yourself and make sure that you're balanced in that frame.
Yeah.
Don't be back too far, but make sure you probably have like from your chest up into the camera, so fill up the space there. But you don't. If I see another leader, like I understand, and there's a age gap, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, everybody doesn't understand how to operate a platform, whatever platform that you may be on.
Mm-hmm.
But take a look at your newscasters, because if newscasters right now, they're still doing shows from their home.
Yeah.
And look at the way some of that ain't. There's no magic in balancing yourself in the picture frame.
In the picture frame. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of close-up faces. I've seen up some nostrils. I've seen cameras probably looking at parts we shouldn't really look at in a business meeting. You got to be conscious of all of that stuff. And we know that lots of people are not working in their actual workspace, right? They're not in their offices. They may be working from home or from some kind of remote location. Even with the backgrounds, you still got to kind of be mindful of what's around you. So I will tell you, I try to set my office up so that I have these pictures on the wall. So whenever I'm doing these video conference things, in the background are these pictures with these sayings and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm promoting all of this goodness, and this thing is these people are going to think I'm so thought-provoking. And then somebody, people always like to take pictures of these virtual meetings, right? And someone took a picture, and I looked in and I said, the only thing I see is that bag of Cheetos I left in the background that I didn't think anybody could see. Now, I didn't focus on the great sayings that were on my wall. I didn't focus on how my pearls was just right that day. All I saw was that bag of Tango and Cheetos.
Well, maybe that's what's important to you.
Well, at the time, those were some good Cheetos at the time. But I didn't think everybody else could see the Cheetos.
And so while you're on these calls, also you got to be able to maintain a strong voice. And so in this space right here, you're not face to face, and you got to remember the way when I get on a virtual call, what I think about is someone's looking at TV.
So you think you're like a TV star?
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh, okay.
But when you engage with a monitor and action is up there, you want to be something that you can enjoy, right? And so for me, when I get up there, I want to make sure that people can hear my voice. And so when you're on a virtual call, make sure you're not speaking at your normal voice as if you're, sitting side by side with that person. You got to be able to increase your voice to a place, because it comes across as confident. It comes across as credible versus you, having this soft talk. No.
Like you're telling lullabies or sleepy time stories.
Exactly. That's exactly what you're doing, is putting that person to sleep on the other end of that when you're talking that low voice.
Yeah. The other thing that you should be mindful of, right, is that there are certain colors and certain things that you wear when you're on screen. They are way more complimentary, right? And so, I know that most people are probably dressing from the waist up these days, which is fine, right? But understand and maybe take take some pictures with your camera and see what colors really project that confidence, what colors really compliment you, like what makes you look the best version of yourself on camera.
And so with that right there, what I do know is I can't wear white because I'm darker complected, and so that white just drowns. I mean, it just pops out, and it just doesn't do well with my skin tone.
Yeah.
And so I'm cautious that depending on the type of meeting that I'm on, especially if I'm leading a training or something like that, I'm not wearing white. I'm wearing something that complements my skin tone there.
My power color is yellow.
Yellow?
Like yellow seems to come through. And truth be told, in the regular world, I very rarely wear yellow. Like it just feels too much on me. But in the virtual space, just from the waist up, yellow seems to be my thing. So, I don't need a reason to shop. I done added quite a bit of yellow to the wardrobe.
You for sure don't need a reason. Don't need a reason to shop.
But I did it. It's for the people. It's not for me. It's for the people.
And while you're up there, it's very easy for you to be on these virtual calls, and you can just hit yourself on mute and you can turn off the camera. But I would tell you that if you're truly looking to build your executive presence, like be present and mindful on the call.
Yeah.
And so be there, be engaged. And being engaged doesn't mean that you have to be saying something. It is, just by your facial expression and how you're looking at the camera, and you're not trying to multitask doing that. But like, be in the moment of that conversation of what's going on.
Yeah, because people take, right? So now there's this nuance when you join a meeting and it's a picture or whatever you have as the background as opposed to your actual face. Like people take that a number of different ways. And I've actually been in meetings and convenings where folks will tell you it's mandatory to turn your camera on. But I will say, if you are always looking to maintain or up your executive presence, you have to be mindful of what those implications are when your camera is off. And if there is a time when you can't turn your camera on, because we had a meeting one time where a gentleman was he was quarantining because he was COVID positive, and he wasn't feeling terrible, but he wasn't feeling great. And so he just really didn't feel confident about how he looked, but he disclosed that early on. He said, let me, first, I just want to put in a space. My camera will be off. This is what's happening. It is not because I don't take this meeting seriously, but I just feel a little more comfortable right now. And the people in the space respected that. Not that you got to tell everybody your business and stuff, but help people understand your intent, like that you understand the importance of being present and having your camera on, and that you don't want to be disrespectful. So for as much as you possibly can, turn your cameras on.
Right. And when you're there, again, it's like, how do you bolster your executive presence? It's like, be involved in the conversation and learn how to use the chat window. Like, to me, that's one of my best, because I want to let people know that, hey, I'm engaged in what the individual is talking about, and like, how do we continue on some additional conversation about this, or we bring out some of the fine points that the individual who's speaking, what they're saying, we put that in the chat room to have this ongoing conversation of engagement. Because if we were face to face, it's not that we would have these side conversations, not listen to the person, but we would probably have some type of response with somebody sitting next to us to say, man, did you hear that that point they just made right there?
Yeah.
So use the chat room for that purpose. Don't be afraid to utilize and get engaged in that chat room with other people that are on the call. Yeah. Especially if you're talking about a group, let's say 8, 10, 12 people or more in that conversation right there. And so you may be on some different trainings where there may be, 20, 30 people up there. That chat room is a great place that you can be able to learn from other individuals that are on the call.
Yeah, I was on a video meeting the other day, had 211 folks on there. Thank God most of them knew to use the chat, because that would have been completely, oh my gosh, I can't even think if all of those folks would have tried to unmute and talk over each other. But the sharing and the knowledge and dropping links and all kinds of stuff that happened in the chat really took that meeting from blah to ah. And the other thing too is you gotta make eye contact. So I learned this the hard way. So, when we're working sometimes, at least for me, when I'm working at my desk, I have multiple screens. And so I may have the screen that's showing the actual meeting, that window on a screen that forces me to turn my head. It's not on my main screen where the camera is. And so when I get to talking to people, it looks like I'm looking off into space. It's like, and then, you look at the people and they looking like, who is she talking
Right.
to?
They started looking.
They start looking like, look,
as if they can see what you.
Right, what is she looking at? And I'm like, oh, my bad, y'all. And then you have to physically, so make sure you make eye contact, not with the people, but with the camera. Don't be mindful if you have multiple screens that you don't look like you're talking to an imaginary friend in the corner.
And so while we've been all involved in virtual space for, since March, and everybody's just increased that level, not everyone knows how to work that. So I would tell you, in terms of increasing your executive presence, like, know the platform that you're using. There's many different ones out there. Some of them have similar type features that are there, but begin to learn all of those so that you can be the leader. And so you leading that process and showing different things, because it's when it's one thing to be on the virtual call, but man, you go into those breakouts, like, people are still wondering, like, well, how do they use the breakout? Like, yeah, I got you. I'm coming to the chat.
Oh my god, because the way you have become the Zoom king these days.
I remember when we got started back in March, I was like, come on, organization, like, we gotta, everybody gotta learn this. And I would say, I'm gonna reinvent myself right now to learn how to use this virtual platform.
I gotta give you your props. You have done an amazing job. It's to the point now that if we're ever on something together virtually, I'm like, Keith got it. I'm just here to talk. I'm not touching a button. Not a thing.
But here's the thing, that when we talk about this whole virtual executive presence space, it is learn the platform, and now you can begin to lead, virtual trainings. So one of the things that, we were able to create during this time that we were closed was this series called 17.
Yeah.
And it was all centered around, like, trying to get some training, because all the training from our national office, YUSA, had been shut down. We couldn't have direct contact with those individuals there. And so we needed something. And so we created a 17 series that at first I just started for like a one-time thing. And then the next thing I know, we're talking about, it
was awesome.
we're talking about...
We had 17.
Right. So, and now it's a thing.
It's
like,
a thing.
people know it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the beauty of it was 17 minutes, right? So it didn't take out of your day. It really paid homage to the fact that people are experiencing virtual fatigue, right? Because it feels like you can squeeze more meetings in your day because you can just click, as opposed to physically having to get to one.
Right.
And so the 17 concept was beautiful because it was 17 minutes. It got straight to the point. It gave you all the good stuff you needed. And if you wanted to engage more, it created a space for you to have the conversation, and it made sure it connected you with the presenter, and you could carry on the conversation if that's what you wanted to do. So that was absolutely, I think, kudos to you. That was an excellent example of, reinventing and using, this virtual space in a whole new way.
All right. Now that we got that recorded, I greatly appreciate that.
I'm still going to deny it. I'm going to say it was someone else.
And so, again, you're thinking about, how do I show up? How do I, show up in this virtual executive space? Many organizations right now are having town hall meetings. Like, what is your role in these town hall meetings? Do you have a lead part in that, or how do you even ask for a lead role in that, so that you can show yourself now to the organization?
I tell you, now more than ever, you have the opportunity to really get in front of folks that you probably would not have had the opportunity to get in front of. I mean, during this pandemic and in the virtual space, I've been able to talk to people in Washington State, right, about critical issues. Now, the reality is, I probably would have never had the opportunity to get in physical proximity with them, just because of all the other barriers around travel and the expense of this, that, and the other thing. But just like that, this whole 1 hour meeting, and from that meeting, I have really kind of forged these new great relationships. They give me perspectives about some of the things that are happening on that side of the country. And it was all because someone was leading a virtual workshop or a town hall, and they gave me 2 or 3 minutes on that agenda. And from there, it was born.
Well, one of the things, again, when we had the doors closed, but yet we were still servicing our members, Leona Kelly, she did a phenomenal job of leading workshops online with our seniors.
Yeah.
And that's a space, again, for her, had never experienced that space.
Yeah.
But then also for our seniors had never experienced that space. And so they were, on this old virtual space. And, I got to say, she did an excellent job of engaging those seniors. Now, Leona, she already knows everybody that comes in our building.
Leona,
but But now she switched this over to this whole virtual space, and she's continuing to have these conversations, have these virtual meetings with our seniors. And so YMCA's across the country are wondering, like, how do we connect and engage with our member? How do we get them back? Well, you know what? Our senior population is not coming back right now.
Yeah.
And so how do we still stay connected with them? There's this virtual space that they're in that we invited them to. We taught them how to do that. And so now she has game day every week. She has prayer and devotion every week. And she has a ton of folks that are on these calls, and they know, and you know, they just like little kids when they get up there. Hey Martha, how you doing? Hey Ethel, how you doing? And you know, they're excited to be there, but they put it on their schedule on the regular to be able to do that. Now Liana's profile, you know, with these seniors are still staying connected, even though they're not, you know, closely seeing each other by coming into the building.
Yeah, and it's forcing you know, the folks who participate in those virtual workshops or those town halls, or if you're a presenter, it really is forcing you to build a skill set that many folks didn't really put a lot of thought into before because we didn't have to, right? So, you know when you're speaking in front of a crowd of people, you know about gestures and not to make a whole bunch of gestures because it can be distracting, but you know, a few of them can really amplify or you know, make your point really solvent that you're trying to make. But in the virtual space, you really have to watch gestures because internet instability is a real thing. And Murphy's Law will kick in every time. And just when you don't think it should freeze, it will freeze.
Yeah.
And here you are in perpetuity with this goofy face and these crazy hand gestures. And people are like, what? And even when you come back, you lost them because they're laughing at how you froze on their screen. And so you gotta be mindful of your gestures when you get an opportunity to go into all of these different online presence spaces and learn how to make your point. But you got to be a little. That was hard for me because I'm definitely a gesture.
Yes, you're a gesturous person.
Is gesturous a word? See how you did me just then? Gesturous.
And so this question comes up is that, well, how do I have this presence in this virtual space? And what I would also say is that you have great opportunity to show off these different skills that you touched the base a little. Now, there's a couple of things that you've done in this virtual space that during this time right now. One is we had you on as a guest with our seniors doing a workshop and around music. So
I did.
Tell us a little bit about that experience, and then after the fact, the opportunities that increase for you.
So first off, let me just say, seniors are not afraid to give you feedback. So just go ahead and prepare yourself because it's coming. And so, you know, I had the opportunity to get on and talk to the seniors about music and the healing and restorative power of music, right? And it was amazing because a part of the presentation was just building in those actual songs, right? To kind of help them relate and this and that. Well, you know, I heard about it. Well, look, when you do this presentation, don't talk over my song and play my song a little longer, and you got to get this kind of music in there. So I took all my notes. And then a senior who was involved in a study at one of the hospitals that she goes to for her checkups, they were doing some kind of virtual convening, and she said, oh, I know just the speaker. So they called me and they asked me to recreate the workshop. So I said, sure, but this time I asked, okay, what's my audience? What I want to get the proper music. I'm not talking through the music. I'm not going to be distracted. So did the presentation again. It was a hit. You could absolutely see the joy on their faces. And then as a result, the hospital system has now called me to ask me will I recreate this workshop across their hospital systems for all of their virtual convenings with that age group around the country. And so, of course, those seniors had some feedback for me. So I will be tailoring that presentation again. But it's been amazing to kind of learn and grow and understand the different audiences, even in the virtual space, and how you have to tailor stuff and grow and listen and absorb that feedback and make it really enjoyable for them.
And so your profile went from a call of about 40 people. Now you're talking about doing something on a national level with that. And so again, when people ask about how do I increase my executive presence, you know, executive presence is not about just the way you dress. In this virtual space, it's going to be about the content that you're able to provide. Yeah. And we took this situation here. Now we got a whole national scenario that's coming up.
Because can I say that reach would have happened otherwise? I don't know, because like I said, you get some of the other barriers of cost and access, and people didn't really know about you. Like it's so much easier to get into spaces that you don't really have access to now virtually, and
exactly.
so it really is amazing.
And there's a space about people like, well, how do I network now? I'm used to going to the chamber meetings and the events and stuff. I'm used to going to the galas. And so, all right, so those things are not happening right now. And so how do you now begin to network with folks? And I would tell you that, LinkedIn for me is like, man, it's like king, because I have access now to really this whole world of people.
Absolutely.
And that all I got to do is type in a message.
Yep.
And then there's this respond. Now, you got to show up on LinkedIn for people to want to be able to respond to you. And so it is, again, I'll go back to the content. What type of content are you putting out there that people would want to follow with you, that people would want to connect with you also?
Yeah, and the other thing too that I use is that if I'm in a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting or something, and I pull up that participant list, and if there is someone in that participant list that I really want to connect with, I will private message them and say, hey, so glad that we get to be in this whatever it is together. Would you mind if we connected again at some other time? I'd love to talk to you about this, or I'd love to hear more about that. Like, go through those participant lists and private message folks and see if you can set up another time there have been so many people that I've connected with because of that. And then of course you use your shared experience as whatever that thing that you were on, right, as the icebreaker when you get to talk to them. And I've had people reach out to me that way as well. Like I just had an amazing conversation with a young guy yesterday, and we were on this huge Zoom call together that had probably 300 people, and he went through that participant list. He sent me a private message. We set up a time and we had a great conversation about how to infuse equity work and how to get other people, to kind of join in and do this work. So
now more than ever is a better time to be able to network, because of the amount of virtual calls that we're on, that we have that ability to be able to reach out to somebody we don't know.
Right.
And directly, right?
Directly.
Like, you're on a call. Like, otherwise I wouldn't know who, you wouldn't know who
I have to go through their assistant or the this person. Yes, directly.
You got to call this person. Can you put me in touch with this person? Now you have this direct access. And I would tell folks is that, and I don't get paid by LinkedIn, but I would tell you.
They should.
They should give me a couple of dollars or something. Because LinkedIn is a way, that surefire way that you can get connected with hundreds of people in a matter of moments.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening to Cosnetics.
Well, we are tackling topics and telling the truth.
Subscribe and listen to us weekly.
And don't be shy. Give us a review.
And as always,
be dynamic.
be phenomenal.
Be Cosnetic.